our scrutiny. We do have Councillor Cornelia here as well. We also have Councillor Lorber, who will be speaking on 2 items. And the first item on the agenda will be the review of the Working Age Council Tax Support Scheme. We have Councillor Lorber who wants to make a representation. Councillor Lorber, you'll have 2 minutes to make your representation. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is obviously a shocking report, which will come as a major shock to a substantial number of people across the borough, so across our wards, so it impacts on all of us. I would like to make 2 proposals in relation to this to mitigate the impact on local residents. One relates to the backdating, and I believe we should not use the universal credit system for deciding on how to backdate, because the universal credit system is not a perfect system. It doesn't work very well. If you ever have to deal with universal credit on behalf of your constituents, you will find that people's accounts are closed arbitrarily just because they have done a little bit of work on the side and then reinstated, and that creates a lot of complication for them. Secondly, so I would propose that is not used, so the 1-month rule should not be implemented. And secondly, there has not been a great deal of time for residents to become aware of these changes, to be able to change their circumstances and to try and seek additional income in other ways. The consultation, like all Brent consultation, isn't really a consultation at all because nothing has changed, and paragraph 10.4 gives it away. Given the scale of the budget challenge, the council preferred option was to consult on the proposal which resulted in the savings level needed. So there was never any intention to listen to the comments made by consultation, be it by comments by residents or the very informed comments by the Citizens Advice Bureau. The impact for some families, losing £600 worth of income in one go, is so appalling in the context of the financial crisis and cost of living crisis that they already face, that mitigation to a greater extent is required. So I'm just suggesting that the committee considers just one final sentence, if I may.
I have gone past your time. I haven't had you.
Well, I'm just proposing that the support fund is increased to £3 million.
I've read your proposals, right, and I want to say thank you for your contribution as well. Okay, on that point. Okay, we now. I'm going to take the speakers first, and then we'll go to all the reports. Okay, we also have Councillor Cornelia here, right, who will be speaking on the on item number 8 on the budget. Councillor Cornelia, if you want to come over to the speaker's chair.
Hi all, thanks. So yes, obviously our scrutiny report on the budget is part of your budget considerations. We know that you will pay close attention to all of the recommendations that we made, I'm sure. Further to Councillor Lorber's point on the council tax support scheme and those changes, they are the biggest changes to the scheme in 10 years. We stayed very, very late in this council, arguing very, very robustly with each other about it, and a business case has been made in regards to that. What I would say is that the task group and the committee will be keeping a very, very close eye on the impact of and the real terms income that we new income that we gain, so that we understand the impact it has on our budget and also the impact it has on our residents over the next year. But I'd particularly like to thank Councillor Donnelly-Jackson, who went through in great detail the efforts that are going to be made to support residents who are going to be impacted by this. and the financial commitments that the council will be making to support those who genuinely can't pay. And we will also be keeping a close eye on how effective those support schemes are at identifying those most at risk of going into unnecessary debt. So that's just on those items that were already raised. In particular as well, I want to flag that our report also has to be held to account by my own committee. And so when it was presented to our committee to get sign off and support of the committee have also tasked us to further reiterate in regards to our recommendation in regards to SIL and using investment to benefit our residents best in a localized way. We also are asking the team to be looking particularly at social value commitments and in our procurement contracts and the opportunities that those provide us to bring some real cold hard cash in terms of investment into the borough. And I know Rachel knows that I'm looking at her because we also talked about this a lot. And this really has to be done. We need to be bringing contracts, as well as the main contracts that we have, we need to be using those to bring new contracts within the social value area directly into this borough for residents and companies that live in this borough and pay their taxes in this borough. And then additionally, I just wanted to highlight that, I mean, the real problem is that for the third year running, we're talking about the fact that local government financing is no longer fit for purpose and essentially nothing can be improved without fundamental reform. And we've had some good indications, but we need more. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, and we also have Councillor Lover also speaking the budget. Councillor Lover, over to you.
Strange process. I would have preferred to have spoken in front of the item rather than right at the beginning, but never mind. So the issue that I really want to raise is the fact that local government is in a financial crisis. Brent is slightly in a better position than most boroughs. Many London boroughs going bust and having to crawl to the government for additional support, which of course is in the form of loans which you'll have to repay. And yet, as a council, we have something like £150 million in a pot of money called the SIL, which remains extremely restricted as to how we are able to use it. This budget that you're proposing does very little for local residents other than imposing loads of cuts. And yet, the borough is in an appalling state. Many of us have walked around Alperton, which is a sort of a highlight and a good example of the state of our streets, with rubbish everywhere, pothole roads, broken pavements, pan spitting or chewing tobacco spitting everywhere. So the Alperton is purple all over. Yet this council has £150 million sitting in a pot of money which it cannot use for providing services for our residents. Now, we have made representations to the Secretary of State, and so have you. We have had no response. Presumably you have not, and I think it is about time that local government across the country makes representations to the government, and the government finally listens and allows local council to decide how to spend the money sitting in its accounts. £150 million in the case of Brent would go a long way to addressing the fundamental issues that local residents are concerned about, and it is time something was done about it to avoid all the cuts in services and the inability of this council to address problems that we face.
Councillor Lover, thank you very much for your contribution. As always, always off the mark, but that's to be expected. And I will address some of your comments later on. Okay, let's go on to the main items on the agenda. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the review of the Working Age Council Tax Support Scheme. Councillor Dolly Jackson, over to you.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I would just like to pay a thank you to the officers who worked incredibly hard on the detail of the financial modelling that went into this scheme that went out to consultation. I'm aware that they took every effort to make sure that the options that we would come up with would have like the most limited kind of impact on those who are most vulnerable. So as has been alluded to, Brent, like many councils across the country, continues to face significant financial pressures. 1 in 6 councils in London have now declared that they're effectively bankrupt, forcing them to reevaluate every aspect of their spending decisions. And whilst Brent remains financially robust, it's not immune to those same financial pressures that other councils up and down the country are also facing. As these pressures reach boiling point, every council in London is considering which areas of spending can be re-evaluated and where greater efficiencies can be unlocked. We've had to look at absolutely everything to see how we can do more with less. But there's no two ways about it. For every efficiency we discover, there's yet another decision that we have to take, which we know will have real impact on the residents we serve. And sadly, today's report is one of those. The council tax support scheme is a vital lifeline for many households. It's reached the point at which this council can no longer afford to fund it in its current form. I do want to be clear, this proposal does not impact pensioners. We're talking about working age individuals in terms of this council tax support scheme. At a predicted cost of 35 million, we've had little choice but to re-evaluate our scheme. For every pound we collect into council tax, close to 20 pence now goes back out in the form of the council tax support scheme. That tells us something that we've long known to be true in Cabinet, that council tax and the way that local government is funded is long overdue reform. We welcome this Labour government's grasping of the nettle and look forward to further announcements later this year as part of the spending review. We're not alone in this challenge, with every other council in London in the same boat. However, this is a politically neutral issue, with Conservative councils, Lib Dem councils, Labour councils all reviewing the spiralling costs of reviewing their council tax support scheme. Today's report sets out our proposed changes to the scheme, which will continue to protect pensioners, but will ask more residents to make a contribution towards their council tax bill. Some of these changes include the introduction of a standard 35% minimum payment for working age households to ensure everybody contributes fairly to local services, the simplification of non-dependent charges, establishing 2 flat rate deductions of £8 per week for non-dependents out of work and £20 per week for those in work. These changes are made not out of choice, but out of necessity. If we neglected our responsibility to set a balanced budget, Brent Council would face a £5 million shortfall, which would have to be covered through either reserves or cuts to other necessary frontline services. Using reserves is not a long-term solution, as these funds are finite and need to be protected for the real emergencies that might lie in wait. I recognise that these changes will impact many households, which is why we're taking additional measures to provide targeted support and working closely with our voluntary sector partners, for example, Brent CAB. We very much want to work with them in terms of the support that the wraparound support that goes to those people facing hardship. The additional support that we have put in is a 1.5 million hardship fund, which will help those most in need, ensuring that no household falls into financial distress due to these changes. And with our proactive outreach and support services, we will ensure that residents are aware of the financial advice, welfare support and discretionary reductions that are available to them. Revising the scheme also offers opportunities to integrate with universal credit, which in the long term will make the process more streamlined and accessible for those already receiving government assistance. To summarise, today's report is a balancing act, balancing our continued mission of financial responsibility with our own political directive to protect the most vulnerable residents. I commend today's report as we work towards a fairer, more financially sustainable future for Brent.
Thank you, Raj, for that. Okay, open out to Cabinet members. Any comments? Okay, Councillor Crone.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Councillor Keneally that this is another example why the funding model for local governments is no longer fit for purpose. Councils of all different political makeups are increasingly having to raise those crucial funds through council tax. We've known for many years that this is a regressive form of taxation that unfairly hits poorer families hard, whilst removing financial burdens from landlords and the richest homeowners. And knowing this, we have worked really hard to protect the more deprived households from this burden. But this was a discretionary support, and it should never really have been up to councils to plug the gap in a broken funding and taxation system. We saw no other way to help those residents through hard times, and we will continue to support them in many different ways. But as a council, it's important that we commit today to continue lobbying for a decent long-term funding settlement. And our new Labour government are taking a step in the right direction with a multi-year funding settlement due from next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Looking around, anybody else? Thank you very much. Okay, just going to the report itself, I want to first of all thank Councillor Donald Jackson and all the officers involved in the consultation. That was pretty extensive, right? And you'll see from the report that we have had responses from a whole host of organisations, right, that have obviously raised some of the concerns that they are worried about and how we manage to support the individuals, right? As Councillor Donald Jackson has said, we are putting forward a £1.5 million scheme that will help try to help support the individuals. There are also various other measures as a council that we put in place through the resident support fund, through the family wellbeing centres, the community hubs, the holidays activities funds, and working with our partners just to make sure, right, that we do reach out to them as well through we have organisations like SUFRA and others who continue to work with us and support us to make sure some of those residents receive the help and support that they need. You know, I have to say sometimes it's interesting that people want to put forward proposals on the back of the fact packet without taking a look at the implications of decisions and the things that are put forward without the proper consultation, engagement, and thought process that goes into some of these decisions as well. I don't think we need any lessons from individuals who just want to come on the day and grandstand and make and pontificate about what they want to do. If the people of Brent wanted anybody else in place, they would have said, you know, the 49 councillors are the ones, and they have said that. And I want to say thank you to the people of Brent for trusting us and giving us the opportunity to be in this position where we absolutely consider every single individual as part of our decision making, right? And the consultation demonstrates that we have been out to consult, to engage, to listen, and we are in a difficult situation in relation to the financing of the council's budget and the council tax support scheme. And I want to assure every single resident out there that we will always put the residents first and protect the outcomes and the future of those residents. Okay, we have the recommendations on page 12, which continue on to page 13 and 14. Can we agree these recommendations and take this forward? Agreed. Thank you very much for that.